Buonasera, bentornato in cucina. Good evening and welcome to Robert's Kitchen. Tonight we are going to make my grandmother's recipe for homemade macaroni. Okay, so our ingredients tonight are regular flour. This is not a gluten-free recipe. Regular flour. We got about 4 cups here. We have a little bit of farina. We have sea salt. We have 5 eggs and a little bit of water. Okay, so we're going to start with our flour. We're going to make a little well in our flour. And we're going to take our eggs. And I always like to break them in a bowl first so that in case there's any shells or anything, that'll go into the bowl and not into our dough. All right, so we're going to take our eggs, and to the eggs, we're going to add a little bit of farina. We're just going to sprinkle it on there. That's about a tablespoonful. And some sea salt, maybe a teaspoon. And to that, we're going to add a little bit of water. Not a lot. And we're going to mix them up. So we're going to add our eggs to our flour. And what we're going to do is we're going to work the flour into the egg. We're working our eggs so that we can make a nice dough. And we just want to make a nice dough. This is the messy part. You can absolutely do this in a bowl if you don't want to do it on a cutting board. You can do it in a bowl and contain your mess. But whichever way you do it, it's going to come out nice. What we're doing is just going to knead this into a nice, smooth ball of dough. Make sure you incorporate all your pieces. And what you want to do is you don't want to knead your dough too much because then it becomes hard and tough. So you want to be careful with that. So just until it doesn't stick to your hands anymore. So our dough is becoming more formed, and what you want to do is just form it into a little ball. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just cover it and we're going to let it rest for about maybe 30 minutes, just to let it sit there so that everything comes together in the dough. So our dough has been resting for about 30 minutes, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut it into pieces, and we're going to add a little bit more flour to the board. Down our dough. We're going to turn on our roller. And we have it on the widest setting, which is number 1. Okay? And we're just going to put our piece of dough through. And we're going to keep doing this until all the dough is through and it's all rolled out. You can do this with a rolling pin. A lot of the older Italian women never had this, so they do it with a rolling pin. And as we're rolling it through the machine, you want to feel the dough and feel and see if it's wet or dry. If it's too wet, you don't want it to stick to your rollers, so what you want to do is add a little bit more flour and just very, very lightly dust it with flour. And just keep putting it through until it becomes smooth. Okay? And then we cut another piece. When I was growing up, we never had the electric KitchenAid. We always did this by hand. Somebody would stand there and crank the machine, and somebody would feed the dough, and if it was just one person, well then that's the joy of making macaroni, doing all by yourself. And it is a lot of fun, though, I have to say, and the results at the end are well worth the work. and all the effort. So all of our dough has been rolled on the thickest setting. What we're going to do is now we're going to put it through in one notch thinner. So we're going from number 1 to number 2. We're all going to flour the dough. And we're not going to fold it. We're going to put it through just like this. And then we're going to fold it again and put it through like that. And if you notice now, the dough is becoming a nice smooth texture. Okay, so we did all of our dough on the second setting. We're going to turn and go to number 3 now. And we're going to put our dough through at number 3. If the dough feels still a little bit sticky, you can add a little bit more flour to it, not too much, because this is now you're starting to get thinner and thinner. You don't want a floury, doughy mix. That's definitely what you don't want. So feel the dough. If it doesn't stick to your hands, you should be fine. And do not fold it, because again, we're going to a thinner setting, so you're just going to put it through at number 3. And feel the smoothness of the dough. And what we can do is we can fold it again. And put it aside. Always keep them separate so this way you know which ones you did. So this one feels a tiny bit sticky, so I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on it. Do not fold it again, just put it through. Fold it once, put it through, and set it aside. And again, and we're going to go this time to number 4. And we're just going to run it through once at number 4. And then we're going to turn it to number 5 and do it at number 5. Now, if your dough still feels a little bit sticky at this point, you can very lightly dust it with flour, but you shouldn't have to. Okay, so here we have our dough rolled out to number 5, and we're just going to make them a little bit even on the ends here. I'm going to take the dough and we're going to cut it into strips. And we're going to cut it into squares. And with these, we're going to fold the opposite ends of the dough around your finger and pinch them closed. So here we are, and we've done our Foglia de Rosa, and we're just finishing up with these. And the next batch with all the other dough, I'm going to make regular spaghetti, and we'll show you how to do that. Oops, escaped. As my father used to say, what are we having tonight? He used to say diapers, because to him they didn't look like rose leaves, they looked like little diapers. All right, so we're going to switch our rollers to our cutters now, and this is the spaghetti cutter. So we're just going to push this in here, make sure it's in, and tighten the nut on the other end. Turn it on, and we're going to make our spaghetti. You can cut the long ones, you can cut them in half. And these you do want to do at a little bit quicker speed than what you were doing when you were rolling, because you don't want the dough to stick to the cutters, and sometimes it does stick to the cutters. All right, there you have it. Spaghetti is nicely cut. And we're just going to leave it there until we're ready to put it into the water. And we have our Foglia de Rosa and our spaghetti. Now we're going to make our tomato sauce. Okay, so here we are at our stove, and what we're going to do is now we're going to make our roasted tomato sauce. What I did was I washed the tomatoes, I cut the ends off of them, stood them up, I put a little bit of olive oil on each, I rubbed a little bit of olive oil on each tomato. I put them in the oven, the convection oven at 400, and I roasted them until they look like this. What we're going to do is we're going to put them in the blender. First we're going to put our olive oil in our pan, and we're going to cut up some garlic to fry in there. Always start with a really good olive oil. Olive oil is important, and you don't want to use a cheap brand. So I think that's enough garlic, and I'm going to put a little bit of black pepper. And we're going to take our tomatoes and we're going to puree them. Okay. We're going to take our tomatoes and we're just going to put them in. You don't have to take the skins off. If you want to, you can. It doesn't really matter. You don't want to put too many in at once because your blender will clog. Put your cover on. Start at a low speed. And as they're going, you can gradually add them. Let them. Then you get crunched up in there, and then add another one. Okay, what we're doing is taking our tomatoes and we're going to strain them like we did in the last video. And you don't have to do this. This is purely a choice. I choose to do it. I don't like the skins or the seeds, and even though they're pureed, I still prefer to strain it. Oh, this smells so good. It's so fresh. I just want to get all the juice and all the pulp out of there. Nothing goes to waste, except for the seeds. There you have it. Your strained roasted tomatoes. Alright, so here we are back at the stove, and our garlic is becoming nice and fragrant. Smell that garlic. I love the smell of frying garlic. Oh my gosh, there's nothing like it. We're going to turn the heat up a little bit, and we're going to put in our meatballs. Fry them up. And after they're fried, not through, but we just want to brown the outsides of them. And after they're done, we'll put in our fresh tomatoes and our basil. Frozen meatballs, what I did was I made them fresh. I had 4 pounds of chopped meat. I put all the ingredients in. I made the meatballs. I rolled them very, very lightly in breadcrumbs, and then I put them on a cookie tray and I put them in the freezer raw. I froze them till they were frozen solid. I put them in Ziploc bags, and then I used them as I need them. We poured our tomatoes into the pot after the meatballs fried. I'm going to add some sea salt. Just going to give that a nice stir. We're going to get our red wine, and we're just going to pour a little bit in there. Okay, and then we're going to grate our Parmesan cheese in there, and we're going to let that cook. Give it a nice stir. There we go. That's our tomato sauce. Our water is just about boiling. We're going to put our macaroni in after the tomato sauce is done, and we'll have a nice macaroni dinner a la Roberto. So here we are. Our water is boiling. We're going to add the salt to it. And remember, you want your pasta water to taste like the sea. So we're going to add our sea salt. So here goes our Foglia de Rosa. And we're just going to put them in the water. We don't want them to stick together. So we want to gently put them in. Give that a little stir. And what some people do is they add olive oil to the boiling water. I don't. If I make ravioli, I will do that for ravioli, but for this kind of pasta, I don't. I just don't think it's really necessary. It does not really stick together if you do it right, and just keep stirring it and make sure you're moving it around, and it should be fine. So we put our spaghetti in, and we're just going to stir it around until it comes to a boil. And this is almost done. Another minute or two. And you want to just make sure that you keep stirring the macaroni around, especially spaghetti with a fork. You don't want it to stick together. And we just keep stirring that. And we have our sauce boiling there with our meatballs. And this is going to be a fabulous, fabulous dinner. Can't wait. And it's just the smells. You could just smell the fresh pasta cooking, and you could smell the fresh tomato sauce. This makes my heart happy. I love this. Our Foglia de Rosa are done. We're going to put a little bit of tomato sauce in the bottom of the dish. And we are going to scoop out our macaroni. We want it to drain off. Oh boy, I can't wait to eat this. This is going to be so good. This reminds me of my childhood. Just put a little bit of tomato sauce on top of them. And we're going to take our wooden spoon here. And we're just going to mix them so they don't stick together. And I'm going to top it off with a little Parmigiano Reggiano. Fresh basil. Oh, the smell is just amazing. And just a little bit more of our tomato sauce goes on top. Look at that. Look at that. And I just wish you could smell what it smells like. It's so good. Test our spaghetti. I'm just going to see if it's done. Yep. And here we go. Fresh macaroni does not take a long time to cook. It cooks very, very, very fast. You want to let that drain nicely. And we're going to go over there and get a nice casserole dish for it. Again, put a little tomato sauce on the bottom. There we go. Take our bowl over here. Put some tomato sauce on top. And put a little Parmesan cheese. So here we have it. Our homemade spaghetti, tomato sauce, our meatballs, and our foglia de rosa. And the smells are just amazing. I love it. And this brings me back to my childhood when my grandmother used to sit us all down at the table and we used to eat as a family, one big happy family. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and have a beautiful evening. Ciao.